Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone back to Black Psychiatry. We are back in the space. It is me, Dr. Harrison, a doc named Danny, whatever you refer to me as. So thank you for joining us. I know we've been gone through for a minute. We shouldn't have left you, but life happens. So I would really first like to shout out and say thank you to Dr. Sarah Vinson for moderating and hosting for me in my absence and some challenging times. So this was actually supposed to happen in October, but we are here. It's a new year. We're still in the Panini pandemic, but we are here and we are going to come through with our wonderful panelists. I don't know if y'all are ready, but we have some excellent panelists, all Black women. We are going to do something that's hard in the United States and in this world. It's going to be centering Black women. I know everyone's not comfortable with it at all times, but you know what? That's what we're going to do here at Black Psychiatry today. So I'm going to get started with introducing some of our wonderful panelists. It's going to be quick. They are wonderful. They're awesome. Literally Google them if you need to know more information. We're going to go through just alphabetical order here, so you know who you're talking to, you know who you are blessed to be in the presence of. I think all these ladies who have been mentors, supporters, educators, and I am so happy to have them here to advocate for Black women in this space. So first we have on the panel, it's only in the order of alphabetical order. First, we have Lindsay Anderson, who is from a platform that she has created, which is wonderful. If you haven't looked at it before, Consciously Coping. Lindsay is a biologist and a mental illness advocate. She is wonderful. I have been on her platform before. I was nervous because I was in the hot seat to be a psychiatrist answering all the hot questions from a patient and an advocate, but Lindsay brought it. So welcome, Lindsay. Also, welcome Ebony Dennis. Ebony Dennis is a clinical psychologist and a psychoanalyst. Put all the respect on all of her titles here in Washington, D.C. with me. Also here in D.C. is Dr. Constance Dunlap, who is a psychiatrist and also a psychoanalyst. I don't know if y'all know how rare it is to find a Black woman psychoanalyst, but I've got them. Shout out to Dr. Dunlap, who I've known since I was a resident, and I used to beg her to come over to Howard and teach, and nothing has changed. Next up, we have Dr. Kimberly Gordon Achebe. She is a resident here. She has been here at Black Psychiatry before discussing all the things for Black kids and school, but she is back. She, as you know, she's a child and adolescent psychiatrist and an educator. And we have the one and only Jessica Isom, Dr. Isom. I asked them for their titles. She said she was a community psychiatrist, but we are going to put all the titles behind her name because she is also a racial justice and equity speaker, a DEI and anti-racism consultant. Give her all the flowers while she's here. And last but certainly not least, from my favorite, our ongoing sponsor and partner from NAMI is Ashley Scott, and she is a mental health advocate, and she will be advocating for all the women and all the things as usual. So thank you for being here. So let's get comfortable. Let's get ready for our conversation. Of course, I see we already have a lot of viewers here, so let's keep building it up. Ask questions as we go. You can put them in the chat. Say hello, interact. We are going to bring you all the tea, all the education, like Black women do. You know, we always have to come through and save everything. And here we are. So we're going to talk about protecting Black women. We're going to talk about advocating. Actually, when we started talking about this, we were thinking about Megan Thee Stallion and how she went through all the things in 2020 and still came out thriving. And we are going to talk about advocating for ourselves, protecting ourselves, and why we need to do that. So first up for our panelists, our lovely ladies, I am going to ask all of us, I know my answer, but I'm going to ask all of us, what is, in your opinion, I have mine, but what is the biggest issue for Black women's mental health today? Anybody want to throw it out? I know it's all the things, everything, but Ashley, can you?
I'll go first. Yes. So I was thinking about this long and hard, but for me, as a Black woman, what I've continued to come against that hasn't gone away is burnout. And the fact that, I mean, as everybody know, we are to be everything and to everyone at all times and look good doing it. And so that's one of the things that I really talk to people about. I talk to my friends about. I'll be like on it, like, make sure you have those hard and healthy boundaries so you can make sure that you're not continuing to burn out. So that's one of the biggest issues to me.
Thank you, Ashley. We will definitely get into that because, and shout out to look good while you're doing it because y'all ladies look excellent and nicely shea buttered up, looking wonderful, moisturized and hydrated out there. I am appreciating that, even if no one else is. I'm telling you, I'm inspired by the moisture. Yes, burnout. We have to be all the things for everyone at all the times, and we are definitely going to get into healthy boundaries and how to do that. Anybody else?
I would like to follow up and say, and I'm going to reword what Ashley said. We are called on to do so much. And as I look around the screen, I realize that we're all advocates. You know, Dr. Hairston, I know, Dr. Gordon. Dr. Hairston is the current president of the APA Black Caucus, and Dr. Gordon is a former president. I know Dr. Dennis is on the Holmes Commission with the American Psychoanalytic, and I'm just meeting now Ms. Scott and Ms. Anderson. And so this just illustrates how much we are also just automatically called to be advocates. And we are doing so much, taking care of ourselves, taking care of families, taking care of patients, taking care of elders, children, dealing with our own losses. And I think the biggest challenge is doing this in the context of a racist environment, which has gotten worse. And I'll just stop there.
Yes, you see, we're all here with the nods, all of those things. Lindsay, Miss Lindsay, you have something for us? Oh no, you're muted. We got to unmute you. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, I want to add as well. I think overall, I think like an umbrella term for me when I think about this as well is just ideology. And so racism and prejudicism and patriarchy, right? And so this ideal, the expectation of what it means to be a Black woman, that we all uphold, we all kind of play into this game that there's this ideal Black woman and that we must all live it, be it, breathe it at all times. And so I believe that coupled with, of course, a multitude of things really does a disservice to Black women's mental and physical health. And then if I had to kind of narrow it down, because we kind of take part in these ideologies, we also don't support Black women. And so the level of support and just coming together and holding us up and being there for us is just not there like it is for our counterparts. And so that in turn just really does a lot of damage to Black women, and which is something I love to see Black women get together, because we understand it's like a mutual, like that mutual connection. Like, I see you, Black woman. And so when we come together, we really embrace each other, and we really try to do a lot of that work to kind of dismantle some of those ideas.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. So, I mean, I'm thinking about what you said, and it made me think about Michelle Obama and Vice President Kamala Harris doing that I see you, because oftentimes we're not seen, and we're not valued and appreciated the way we should be. The quote that comes to mind to me, and I actually discovered this quote during the pandemic that continues to exist, was Audre Lorde's quote, is caring for myself is not self-indulgence. Because oftentimes in my career or in my life, I felt that when I was taking care of myself, I was being selfish. So taking care of myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. And this is one of those times where actually that quote makes a whole bunch of sense, because the ideologies, the white supremacy, this idea that Black women have to champion diversity and inclusion and equity for the world, it's a huge weight. And so I've had to say no and say that it's a little bit of self-preservation that's needed, And I encourage the people that I talk to do the same thing. Yeah.
I really like what all of you guys are saying. I agree completely. I recently got a book for Christmas and the title was Unseen, and it shocked me, my reaction. It was tears because I felt unseen. Yet I'm constantly asked to do things. Mm-hmm. So I've recently been talking about this idea of payment for how we show up. And it's not payment out of greed. It's payment out of being symbolic for an exchange of what I am giving. Because I think that this society has become accustomed to stealing, taking, and being entitled to not just our bodies, but our minds. So it's, of course you're going to come and give. Or the idea that I'll hear, well, it's customary for you to come and teach for free. And I will, I was talking to my business partner, Karima Ware, and she said, it was customary to steal from us. So, we can give up some customs, So this is something that I've been talking to my counterparts about is let's ask for some more support. Because the thing is that all of us don't have the generational wealth. It was stolen from us. And so the other thing is, most of us are past survival, right? But we deserve security, okay? So once we get security in this capitalist nation, it is representative of having a home and, savings. And then we want to thrive. We want to have, enough to get self-care, to take time off to go get self-care, get out of this country. So these are the things that I think I am talking about when, yes, value me. If you really want to see me, understand that when I'm coming to you talking about race and racism, let me just say that, I'm talking about a near experience. I'm not talking about some esoteric theory. I'm talking about my life, and it's difficult to do. It takes a lot out of me. So that's something that I've been thinking about lately.
Thank you for that, Ebony. Come through with that, tying it all in. Go back on YouTube and look at our wealth and mental health and how it all ties in. And we will give some more lessons on redlining and the stealing of generational wealth opportunities. Jessica, what's going on for Black women? I know everything, but tell me for you, what's the biggest issue?
I mean, echoing the comments on being invisible, yes, but also being present, but having people not even see us for what we are, but what they imagine us to be, which is this superhero, magical being that somehow is able to absorb all of what it means to be the lowest, most disrespected person in this country and still show up and look good while doing it, which is irrational and makes absolutely no sense. And I think about showing up in spaces, which we've done a lot over 2020. We show up, we talk, we share, we're visible for that hour. And then after that, people sort of imagine that none of that pain, hurt, trauma exists. And it's like, I want people to see us 24/7 as living in these bodies and having these experiences. And what would you do for someone? What would you give to someone? How would you support someone that's living that 24/7, not just for the hour that we had a conversation about it, not just for the one article that we wrote, but our 24/7 experiences existing at this intersection. And how are you going to support me with that? So if people could figure that out, we might be able to survive, live longer, get paid a little bit more, ultimately get to the point where we're secure and then can ultimately thrive.
Come through, Jessica. I knew you were going to come through with all the facts. So wonderful to have all of you ladies. Shut up, Jessica. I saw your new headshots. Looking wonderful. Also, I'm following Jessica on the Twitter, and she doesn't have it up there, but on the Twitter and Instagram. So we are going to get into it. Remember, you can ask questions. Remember that so this is something that I have to say frequently in organized psychiatry and medicine. Yes, I am a psychiatrist. Yes, I am a physician, just like all of us work in mental health in some way, as an advocate, as a survivor, as a therapist. But I'm Black. I'm a Black woman. And first I identify as Black. So this is something that's happening in my community. This is something that's happening to me, to the people that I love. So if you are a Black woman, you treat Black women, you care about Black women, you love or support or want to be an ally to Black women, we need you to listen up here to our wonderful panelists that we have here today. So first, we're going to talk about, I'm going to ask Jessica, Dr. Jessica, Tell me, why do we always see hashtag protect Black women? What does that mean? Is it important? I know we're centering Black women here. Why isn't it hashtag protect all women? What's going on with that?
Oh, that's a great way to start off the answer. So they've actually done studies on this, and I would ask everyone to just close their eyes just for a few seconds and answer 2 questions. With your eyes closed, who do you imagine in your head when you hear the word woman? What does that person look like? Second question, what do you imagine in your head when you hear the word Black? What does that person look like? And I promise you, most people, we could do a survey, would not see Black women. They would see women as white women, and they'd see Black as Black men. And that speaks to this idea of, and reality of our intersection representing invisibility. And not only that, if you add anything else to that, fat Black woman, LGBTQIA Black woman, Black woman who does not have a citizenship status, any of those other intersections added to that one intersection increases in an exponential way your invisibility. So people are not checking for us in basic terms. They're not checking for us. They're not thinking about us. We're not at the forefront of their minds in their everyday interactions, let alone what they're deciding in these rooms where they allocate resources, make policies, determine practices. So we have to say protect Black women because people are literally not thinking about us. They're not imagining us. And even when we do get a little bit of news media coverage, for example, it's often transient. You'll see when people talk about 2020, they reference George Floyd, for example, who is a Black man. We had to say her name about Breonna Taylor because we already knew what the deal was. They're going to stop saying her name, like it's going to dissipate into nothingness. The last thing I'll say is the names they don't say that are Black and women and at other intersections are all the Black trans women who were murdered. There was one point last summer where there were 6 murders in 9 days. That's not making the news. So again, as those intersections pile up, you are that much more invisible. So protecting Black women in an elaborated fashion means protect all Black women, inclusive of those who are fat, those who are trans, those who are anything else that adds to their increasing marginalization.
Absolutely. And I know we love to be all inclusive, and there's feminists and we all care about women, but hello, as Malcolm X told us, Black women, we need some extra care and attention here. So we are definitely going to try to be inspired, encouraged, and all of those things. But I really want to discuss how being a Black woman in the United States, in this world, I guess across the diaspora, across the pandemic, across or ascendemic, as they call it as well. Trauma. We have to talk about trauma. How does trauma start? How does it show up? And who else should I ask about this than a psychoanalyst herself? Dr. Ebony, can you tell us about where does trauma start for Black women? Where does it come from? What's going on?
Yeah, I thought about so many ways to answer that question, but I decided to answer it pretty literally. And so I'm thinking about when in utero is where the trauma can begin with the stress levels of our mommies. And let me see, pulled up a 2020 study by Brad Greenwood et al. And they examined 1.8 million medical files. And what they found is that Black newborns die 3 times more than white newborns die. But when you add a Black obstetrician into the fold, that baby has 2 times more chance of living. So I think about this, like the non-Black obstetricians, and I cannot believe that they are purposely nefarious. But I believe that what happens is unconsciously, our newborns are not considered to be babies that are vulnerable and that are needing of care. They're seen as something else and not receiving the care, and it's lethal. So the trauma begins from when we first come in this world.
I definitely agree. I think I see all the nods, and we definitely agree about that. Now, I'm a little bit radical, as they say, but because I can say that I think that some people are nefarious and are intentional in their bias towards Black women and Black people, families, and all the Black people and things. However, yes, we will accept the unconscious bias into the space as we talk about healing and trauma.
Dr. Harrison, I would just like to add to what Dr. Dennis has said,
yes.
and just elaborating. Trauma is transmitted transgenerationally, and so I can't say it's in the DNA, so I don't want to go too far, but it certainly is in the behaviors of the perpetrators. And so we're talking about people, when we say transmission, we say genetics, we're not just talking about DNA, we're talking about culture and behaviors that are passed down, and in the perpetrator and in the victim. Although we do know that the Black community is really resilient, and I think we'll talk about that later. But it's also learned behavior.
Yes, and if I can jump in too with Dr. Hairston talking about being radical, it's interesting too, because you telling your truth is considered radical when you're talking about the humanity of Black people. But actually, that's part of, you're right on course with, there is a pathway to trauma recovery. And that's number 1, 2, is telling the truth about it. So you're right. Although I don't want to accept it about folks' positions being murderous, they're supposed to do no harm, right? There are some that are, and that's how we begin to recover. And having that ability to tell the truth is tough. And to listen to it is tough.
Yes. Radical, what else? Aggressive.
Yes.
Angry.
Both
things.
Yes.
I let me tell you.
Truthful, honest, accurate.
Yes, we got to replace those. We got to replace those descriptors, because in general, I'm not too angry. I'm just watching Netflix over here, just trying to support and advocate for my Black people. Dr. Gordon. So I know that I understand that a lot of times when we think about trauma, people think about sexual trauma, people think about generational trauma, as Dr. Dunlap brought up. But every day, and I know that I learned this from you as a young resident before you became my BFF over there, when I was like, I gotta hear her talk. I know about microaggressions. I know that's something that you taught about, but just how, or what are some ways that trauma shows up on a day-to-day basis? Like, what can trauma look like for Black women, and that we might not even be acknowledging and being aware of? Like, what can trauma look like for us?
Excuse me. Mute. So thank you for that nice introduction. And being a Black woman and talking about trauma is traumatic, to be quite honest. And so when I was thinking about the question, one of the things that came to mind is, how do we talk about trauma as it exists for Black women without pathologizing our struggle, right? What has been done to us for generations, for centuries, it's not our own pathology, but it's the pathology of the oppressor, right? And so when I think about how trauma looks today and how it presents itself, I think about my own lived experience, but I think about the lived experience of many Black women of intersecting identities. And, trauma in a true sense is not just PTSD, it's psychological and racial trauma. It's that invisible burden that we carry with us every day, that sometimes we have to react to and sometimes we can't react to, depending on where we are and how safe those spaces look. But, I just decided just to write down a list of words that describes what trauma looks like for an individual. It could be, intermittent periods of rage, or despair. It can look invisible, like it'd be invisible cries for help with no audience to hear you or to comfort you. It can feel like emotional exhaustion. And I know many women, particularly Black women, speak about that emotional exhaustion that they feel every day. It's like they're carrying this weight and they feel tired all the time. They feel powerless at times and helpless too. It can be overreacted and underreacted. And keep in mind, I'm not talking about hypervigilance, which is what overreacting typically means, but it's that overreacting when there's a crisis because you want to be heard and no one is listening. And it can be underreacting when there's a crisis because you want to be heard and no one is listening. But the ultimate part of it is that people experience trauma differently, right? There's no right or wrong way to experience trauma. It's just the way you have learned to cope based on your lived experience. It also looks like pretending, right? It's pretending to be okay when you're not feeling okay at all. And I'm trying to be simplistic for a reason, because when we talk about PTSD, we say, oh, you know, you have these hypervigilant and avoidant behaviors, you have depression, you know, but really it's a person that's walking in their spaces that's feeling so low at times that it takes energy. It takes energy to put a smile on your face when you know someone's going to microaggress against you. You can feel it. You know it's coming. But what do you say, you know, in that moment? You know, I've sat in spaces where I was the angry Black woman. And if anybody knows me, I'm the opposite of angry. But, you know, in those spaces, you have to respond. And our response as Black women has been to protect others, sometimes to the extent of not protecting ourselves. So that's what trauma looks like for Black women. It's simple. We need the protection of our communities. We need the support of our communities. And honestly, this pandemic has taught me more than anything that we're not getting it.
Definitely. Thank you for that, Dr. Gordon, Dr. Kim speaks. So we've identified how unprocessed trauma can present. You might not even know. You don't know what a Black woman is carrying. You don't know what's going on in this world for a Black woman or for anyone, but again, we're centering Black women tonight. So we talked about what unprocessed trauma can look like. We talked about hiding the trauma. Now, Dr. Dunlap, what does healing and growth look like for Black women? And can we heal without triggering past trauma and re-traumatization? That's a phenomenon that we have to think about. How can we manage this? We've identified it, but what can we do about it now?
Well, this is an excellent question, as have been the others. But I do want to modify the question a bit, because I think that, yes, we can heal without triggering past trauma, but it is challenging in an environment, you know, where we're immersed in racist culture. And as we know from the events of earlier this month, January 6th, we're living in an environment when people are no longer wearing hoods. You know, in other words, the hoods have come off, which means that the aggression is more blatant. And, you know, so we also don't have as much of a sense of safety. But having said that, I think that a few of the thoughts have already been alluded to. And for example, Dr. Dennis mentioned that we need to ask for more support. And we need to acknowledge that we do need to be supported and we do need to be protected. And I say that because we are not seen. We're not seen in clinical spaces. Yet, as Dr. Dennis also, I believe, pointed out, there's a paradox. We're not seen, but we're often asked to take care of others. And so I believe that the first thing to do is for us to check in with ourselves. And that really does mean stepping back and taking time to check in with yourself. I mean, so for example, as clinicians, we often ask how often someone is exercising, how much aerobic exercise are you doing, how many times a week? And we're just so thrilled when a patient is working out at least 3 times a week. But how often do we ask, how often are you sitting still? How often are you sitting still in prayer or meditation, or just simply to rest because you're tired?
Yes.
This is a question that I've started to ask my patients. And let me just say, when you check in with yourself and listen to your own voice, you will really discover some things that will be helpful. So I'm saying that it does begin with us, but also, because burnout was mentioned, it is important to step back and periodically do an assessment. You know, do the Maslow burnout assessment. In other words, check in to see where you are. Don't wait until, you know, you feel like you've been used up.
Thank you for that, Dr. Constance Dunlap, coming through as usual. Checking in is important, and checking in on Black women especially is important. Checking in with yourself, checking in with your circle, checking in on the strong friend. I think that we hear about that Oh yeah, you look like you're fine.
Yeah.
It looks like you had it all together.
Let me just add, Dr. Harrison, because you just mentioned something that's also very vital. When we look at what is referred to as resilience among Black women, Black women have the lowest suicide rate of the four demographics: Black men, Black women, white women. And it's thought to be because of our resilience. And, resilience is defined as the ability to overcome something after an adversity and to thrive and do well, and not appear to be suffering. In fact, to not suffer, and to also not be bitter and enraged. And there are several components of resilience. One is cognitive development. The other is relationships. And the third is also external support, which can be a spiritual group, it can be church, or, whatever it is. But those relationships are especially important for us as Black women, because we take care of each other and we thrive. And it's important for us to also not start to adopt some poor behaviors that we see in the dominant group, and that is malignant envy. It's important for us to, if we start to feel that, to check it and put that aside, because usually if you're feeling that, it's because somebody's doing something that you really think that you should be able to do. So, but the point is that sisterhood is one of the things that has sustained us for generations.
Oh my God. Yes.
Sorry.
I
was thinking about the metrics that we use to determine resilience for people. And from like a system standpoint, it might be like how many times someone presented to the emergency room, or how many times they've been hospitalized for some kind of mental health concern. And I can't tell you how many Black women I know who are single mothers, raising multiple children with limited support, also struggling with mental health issues, who are literally keeping it together for their children alone. They could be at a breaking point where in any other situation, they should be in the hospital receiving some kind of intensive treatment like ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, because that's how severe their depression is, or they have really disabling anxiety, or their PTSD is off the chain. And they're like, my responsibility here is my children. I have to get them to school. I have to feed them. I have to make sure I am here for whoever needs me, or I'm taking care of this person or that person, and they can't survive without me. So these metrics that we use to determine like resilience and what people are able to handle are inherently racist, because they don't acknowledge that the way that we exist in the world is we will wait until like we grind ourselves down to the bone before we say, okay, I'm going to put all of my burdens down and actually seek the help and support that I need. So I just know so many women holding it together by a thread. And those women are not really talked about in these conversations about Black women and mental health.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Dr. Jessica. Yeah, I think that we see a lot of, even when I'm in the emergency room, I see mothers who come in like have suicidal thoughts. They're like at their end, but they're like, but I got kids at home, and I got 3 kids at home who I got to call somebody to see if they can take my kids, because I don't want to get my kids taken. I don't want you to tell anyone that I'm going through this, because I don't want this to become criminalized and saying that I'm neglecting my children, and someone says that I'm not there to care for them. So there's big challenges for Black women. Shout out to Black moms. I'm not one, but shout out to those of you, especially in the panel, who are Black moms holding it down. I don't even know how you're doing it, because I can't even take care of myself. But this leads me to our question for our wonderful mental health advocate, who is the expert on all things advocating, Ashley Scott. Now I'm going to hit you with a twofer here. You can choose how you want to answer. You know, it's a liberated space. Do whatever you want, Black woman. But tell me, please, how can Black women speak up for and advocate for themselves? This includes from Zoom meetings to bullying in Clubhouse and Twitter. How can Black women speak up for themselves? And do they need men to be on board? Do they?
Okay. I know it's a big one, and I thought a lot about it. And so I am, like you said, a mental health advocate. And so I like to think that I have a PhD in my own lived experience as a Black woman, but also as a peer, as a person living with major depressive disorder and panic disorder. And so I like to talk from my own lived experience. So one of the things, how I got to the place of advocating for myself, first of all, as a Black woman, when I'm in rooms, when I'm sitting in rooms, I'm usually one of few Black people, if Black women. And also, um, I'm also the youngest in the room. And so when there are things that are going on, maybe there's a conversation and there's an issue, and the elephant in the room, don't nobody want to talk about it. I feel like, and I felt in the past, that the Black woman is always the one that needs to say something about this. And that she's always looked to identify the issue, say the thing that no one wants to say, but also she's the one that needs to come or that's looked to for these innovative solutions for problems. And it's not said out loud, but it's definitely known when she's in the workplace, in her family, different places like that. And so I come from that place, and for a long time I got sick and tired of it. I got sick and tired of trying to speak up for different things that people didn't want to say. And so when I came to a point where my depression, my anxiety was weighing down so hard on me, it was very debilitating, as well as the I was a smart Black girl, and people would be like, Ashley, you good, you smart, you're gonna figure it out. But I'm like, but I'm feeling this, but I'm going through this, but I went through a traumatic experience, and nobody wanted to acknowledge it because for some reason, when a Black girl experiences something, nobody knows what to do. But I'm gonna just say it. I feel like when other people have experiences, people jump into action. But that's just me. That's how I be feeling. Might not be true,
It
but
might
it's
be.
hard. What you say?
It might be true. And
It might be. um, but for me, what I've had to do to advocate for myself, I've had to do that within myself. And I'm a person like a lot of the ladies who was talking about. I'm that woman. I'm the one that was trying to go to school, try to manage two jobs. I was trying to do social justice work, social impact work, that I had been doing for a very long time. And so I was trying to do everything that I was supposed to be doing. And I was so overwhelmed. And then I started to feel overwhelmed, and my world was crashing around me. And all I would say, I didn't know the word overwhelmed. that didn't that wasn't in my vocabulary, really. Um, and I didn't know about burnout, but I knew that the one thing that would go in my head when I felt overwhelmed was I just want to die. And I know a lot of the young people, they say these words, right? They say stuff like that when they get overwhelmed, when it's something embarrassing. Oh my God, I just want to die. I just want to die. I don't want to be here right now, that kind of thing. But the more that self talk, that tape kept going in my head, and it became like an everyday thing, multiple times a day. Um, it paralleled with my panic attacks. It was with my depression. Um, I started to want that. I started to feel like, okay, yes, I do want that. Um, and then I realized, after I realized that's what was going on, I started to really sit with that. And that took therapy. It took a lot of work, but I want to say that, not to go too much longer with this, but just to say that this advocacy starts with us. It starts with ourselves and our self-awareness of what our self-talk is. I think that may be one of I don't know, if your self-talk is as loud as mine, it might be the most obvious kind of thing you can do is just take a moment for yourself and listen to what you're saying to yourself. If you're saying to yourself, "Oh, I'm so ugly today. Oh, I'm not good enough to do that." Those different things, those tapes go in your head. Um, but they really tear you down, especially at your lowest moments. So that's what I want to say. And do we need men? Yes. Do we always have men advocating, like having our back? No. Do we have to go into spaces and continue to do stuff and not have them? Yes. And it's unfortunate. And the thing about it is that we need everybody, like not just men, but like everybody on the spectrum. We need everybody in every race. Um, we need everybody, but we don't get it. Um, yeah.
Yes.
I was gonna say something else, but I'm gonna just leave it at that, y'all.
Thank you for that truth and authenticity. Thank you for. Oh, I'm so proud of you. Thank you for that. I'm so I'm a little bit more medication than therapy, but for the therapist on tell me how I'm doing for reflection, I heard what Ashley said is that we need to advocate starting within ourselves, and that we have to talk nicely to ourselves because we are listening. Did she say that? Okay. All right.
Yeah, definitely. And that definitely happens in therapy. Like woo woo therapists, like y'all killing it. Um and I definitely like advocate and talk to people about like what kind of therapists, like where the Black therapists are. Because we got to stick together and like finding y'all and being like, there she goes, she over there.
Dr. Harrison, I wanted to underscore what Ashley has said about our needing everybody, just to expand this question. Because, and by the way, I need to acknowledge Dr. Isom. Dr. Isom and I met in the APA assembly, and talking about somebody holding it down, she's the one that will be talking about just calling things out, writing action papers, and talking about issues that other people were not addressing. I mean, really has moved the APA to just in using the term anti-Black racism. And so I mentioned her also because, we're part of a few people who have been vocal, and that can be demanding. I just want to say something about the need for all advocates. We need everyone. And it occurred to me, the way that I'm thinking about people now, there's this silent, immoral majority. That's how I'm referring to them. The people who are just silent, not saying anything, not doing anything. And I'm beginning to think people are really, they're part of the solution or they're part of the problem. And since people don't wear hoods anymore, I need for people to declare themselves. I need for them to let me know who they are. And they need to actually take an active role in helping out. That's where I am.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Constance Dunlap, because we don't know. We can't see. You look like an ally. You look nice. You look like I don't really know. You put up a Black Lives Matter Black square. What else you got for me? Miss Lindsay, you've been quiet, but I want to hear what you have to say, because I know you are like look at Lindsay's Instagram, because I really love it and it inspires me. Consciously coping, it looks great. I need to take me assistant need to look at you, because you are really talking about creating a safe healing space for Black women and their mental health. And I know that you have all aspects of the experience, lived experience, advocating, dealing with your own mental health issues, dealing with doctors who didn't always listen, and just the way that can be portrayed. So please tell us about creating a safe space and how you got yourself to where you are today.
Absolutely. So before I jump into creating a safe space, I wanted to add this. So Dr. Harrison, I'm very vocal. I rarely hold my opinions in. So I want to bring this into the space as we talk about, do we need men? Absolutely. We women did not create patriarchy. period. Like exclamation point, dot, 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 like bold print, italicized. Like we did not create that issue, right? So we did not create that space. So it is absolutely imperative and important for men to be vocal, and not just to be vocal, but to be consistent. Like, I don't need you just saying, oh yeah, I'm an advocate. Oh yeah, I got your back. Sure, I'll help. And then when I need you, you're not there. So like, I'm going to actually need you to do the thing that you said you're going to do. And so I just wanted to throw that out there. So creating a safe space for ourselves as Black women can look different for all Black women, right? And so we know that all Black women are not monolithic. We know that there are Black trans women. There are Black women from different socioeconomical, economical classes. There are Black women, from different spiritual backgrounds. So whatever that space may be for you, you really have to cater it and curate it specifically for your needs. But what I will say, the very important thing to creating a safe space is really asking for support. And so from my own personal experience, I never was taught or even saw a Black woman ask for support. Like, I didn't even know as a child, like, what did that, like, I'm trying to think, I'm like, I don't even know what that looks like. And so it has been challenging for me. It has been very difficult as someone who manages a mood disorder, someone who manages anxiety and PTSD. It has been very difficult and very challenging for me to live this life, not asking for support when I direly need it. And then a part of that was I didn't even know I needed support, right? So like when Ashley said, like, I didn't know what overwhelmed meant. I didn't either. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know the difference between a psychiatrist and a therapist. I just didn't know those things. So I didn't have those educational resources, because certain platforms and certain resources that are available to our white counterparts aren't popping up in the projects. Like, I didn't see a lot of large organizations with mental health coming to my school. I didn't see that at my community events. I didn't hear about it in church. So it really took years for me to kind of be opened and my eyes open and kind of have this like wealth of knowledge. But that was a lot of work that I had to do. So doing things like this to me is creating a really safe space, right? So we're all here, we're all sharing our opinions, we're all sharing our expertise, our knowledge, our experience. And so what this is allowing, it is allowing for other Black women that are watching us to say, oh my gosh, wow, like, I do need support. I do need to stand up for myself. I do need payment. Shout out Dr. Dennis. Like, I need to do these are things I need to do to empower myself. And so for me, it's telling women that it is Black women, it is okay. Like, it is, you deserve to be angry. Like, you are well within your right to be pissed off. Like, we deserve that. And sometimes that is very liberating to be like, you know what? I am angry. You did something that really does not sit well and does not resonate and does not serve me. And I will not accept that. And that is creating that safe space. So being able to vocalize what we need is definitely like the beginning of the safe space. And then just kind of taking your time and understanding that it is a process, right? So we won't get it right all the time. Like, we may start creating this safe space and then we may take a step back and do something that we're like, oh, I don't think that was right, but that's okay. And it is about accepting the process and really accepting the moment and understanding, well, I can't go back and change it, but I can accept it and I can move forward. And so I learned, look, I know it sounds good the way I'm saying it, but I really learned all this from my therapist. So shout out to my therapist. But I think that's very important. And so just to wrap it up, I want to just add, when it comes to therapy for Black women, for everybody, but because we're in this space, we have to understand that therapy is not a reactive service. Therapeutic services should be used proactively. Psychiatric services should be used proactively. We should not wait until we're burnt out, overwhelmed, feeling ideation, having suicidal thoughts, and we say, oh my gosh, stop the press, I gotta get help. We need to be taking those steps before we get into these episodes, right? And so I implore everyone who's watching to really seek a therapist. And I think if we can kind of break that ideal down that therapy is only for people who manage a mental health disorder. It's all because people who manage a mental health disorder only experience one thing, and that's distress. That's the only thing they experience. They don't experience joy and pleasure and happiness and excitement and fervence. Like, they don't experience those range of emotions. So, oh my gosh, there's no way I can go to therapy because I experience those things. And so once we start to like deconstruct all of those thoughts, and like I say, patriarchy and just the Western civilization that we live in has really, it benefits. This society benefits off of the detriment of Black women's health. So that's all I gotta say.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you. Consciously Coping, Lindsay coming through. If y'all don't know, y'all can't tell, I love Lindsay. And she is, I'm just so proud of her growth and development and just growing into her authentic, healed self. And I will have to agree that even in my own family, in my own home, it's said that like, oh, therapy is only for people who have really bad problems. Like, therapy is like if you're really messed up. And I was like, hello, I go to therapy. Oh, all right, I see what you're saying here at home. Okay, that's fine. But we have lots of questions. But before, ladies, do you have some time? Do we have some time for
okay.
questions?
Oh yeah, I just have one thing to say to Ms. Anderson. I'm loving you too. Is that's what they want you to believe? Is that you don't need therapy?
Same.
You don't need medication. Okay, do not drink that Kool-Aid.
White supremacy Kool-Aid. We have to put that part
Ooh, okay. You deserve it.
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to just add one comment. I'm trying to be quiet a little bit, but I also want to say that Black women need Black men, but not only do we need them, we actually love them. We have their back when no other group of people have their back. And so we need Black men to have our back, right? And many Black men do, and there's a whole bunch of conversations that we can have about what is hindering some Black men to be able to be there, because we have to also address their trauma, right? But I love that quote. We did not create patriarchy, right? So don't shit on us. Sorry, I said that on YouTube, but that's that's what that's what we need to say. Black women, we really need that support. But, this is not about bashing Black men. I think Black men are part of this conversation and narrative, and we definitely need them. So I hope that, they sense the love, because it's all there. But we definitely need them to stand up and also voice their own concerns, because many times Black women has been the voice for Black men when they have issues. And we really need them to speak up about patriarchy too, and actually dismantle some of that. Because in the workplace, especially Black men, if they happen to get in those higher positions, and many times they do get in higher positions than Black women, they oftentimes get paid more. They get the respect, whereas Black women can be in their leadership position and do not get the respect or get paid as much. And so there needs to be some dismantling of patriarchy when it comes to Black men supporting Black women who are in those positions of power but are not empowered. Right.
And I wanted to say real quick that it's not that Black men don't support us, because there definitely are Black men who are advocating, who are speaking up, but y'all need to be louder. Okay, when and not to say like y'all not loud, it's just we be loud about it. When something happened to Black men, we do not stand for it, and we're loud about it. We always have been. Our tears are loud, our action is loud, all of that. And we need to hear that, because on the other end, when it's time to, do other stuff and get excited and all of that, y'all be loud. Like, come on. That's what we need from Black men, to show your support. So I hope that, protecting Black women is not just a trend, like, or that it trends so much it just stays that way.
Definitely agree. Thank you for reminding them. It sounds like everyone's saying we need some reciprocation of this back having. Like, I need everyone to have all the backs. All right. So we do have quite a few questions over here. I did have one more question, and I wanted to know if we could just really be authentic here for the mental health clinicians on the panel and really talk about the strain of being a Black mental health clinician and belonging to the community that's battling a disease. There's a couple diseases that we're battling, but a pandemic and also the racial injustice that disproportionately affects people who look like you, people who are your family, people who are you, and still going through it every day. I don't know, Dr. Dunlap, Dr. Isom, do y'all have some comments for us on this?
I'll just share one thing, just one aspect of this, and that is, as also physicians, we are public health servants as well, and that was I was really reminded of that during this pandemic when we were learning things alongside patients and just talking to them about basic things, not only washing their hands, but at one point I said if we had enough masks for everyone, we would be using them. Okay, clearly we've gotten there. At least we know that's important. But let me tell you where I think about this. I start at home because, the patients are going to be taken care of. And what I am focused on is educating family members, especially those who are concerned about experimentation. And I've had to let them know, look, this is not Tuskegee. Your healthcare workforce is receiving this vaccine first. And at first I was going to take the attitude, I'm on a family Zoom call weekly. And first I was going to take the attitude as, well, I'll just respect people's decisions. And I will still do that. But I believe it's my responsibility to educate my family about the importance of receiving this vaccine. So that's just one thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, with that said, Dr. Dunlap, because I've been in these rooms in spaces talking about the vaccine and hearing people talk about their experience of it being offered to our community, and just like the George Floyd, just like the Breonna Taylor, after these moments where that reveals itself, I find myself crying at my desk at work or at home or driving in the car on the way home, and it's really tears related to the weight of all of it. The history and its contemporaneous consequences. I'm not going to use any cuss words, but like defecating on all of our efforts to actually save lives, even when we have the power and influence to do so. So we're in these positions, we got these credentials, we can facilitate people's connection to health and well-being, and all of that history and present day things that are still happening are preventing us from connecting people to what we finally have the ability to connect them to. So I cried a whole lot in 2020 related to that. That's my authentic, being transparent, vulnerable for a moment experience. And this year, I feel like, there's going to be a lot more unless something shifts and changes and institutions start telling the truth, as we've described before, and also make themselves more trustworthy so we can actually connect people with what they need.
Let me just, if I might follow up, because Dr. Isom just reminded me that you wanted us to talk about our own experience. And you see, I just went straight into physician, taking care of other people, taking care of family. And I want to go back to August. And I remember, and this is right before vacation, I remembered wondering, how am I okay after George Floyd, after everything? And I'm in a group where I do some writing with Dr. Isom and Dr. Dennis, and we talked about this, and I just realized, like, wow, this is a lot to deal with. Now, I did decide I needed to exercise more, and in fact, I even started biking. But the point is, I just remembered feeling that I was dealing with an inordinate amount of stress. Certainly vacation helped, but I'm just sharing this to let you know that, yes, we feel it and I experience it. And I also know that other people don't think of us experiencing this.
Definitely. I agree with that. I think it goes back to what we're all saying, that the demand and not being seen is a lot. Mm-hmm. And it weighs heavily on all of us, whether you are, I mean, we're all identified as Black women in the Black community. So there's that. And I always say, like, okay, being Black here is hard. Being a doctor here is hard. Now you put them together, and what do you think that's like? Imagine, okay? It's easy. It's not easy. It's a struggle. And I think that a lot of times people don't know, like, you know, some mornings I'm just laying in my bed like, oh God, like, and I have to take all the motivation. I have to get my friends and shout out to my friends like Dr. Kimberly Gordon and my other friends on my group text. Dr. Stephen Starks, who was usually here in the background, but he is taking a test today. Dr. Ayana Jordan, Dr. Michelle Durham, Dr. Daryl, they lift me up and bring me like into a space that can get me, that can push you that far. Because I think that a lot of times in the majority world, they're like, oh, you're not one of those type of Black people. They're like, oh, okay. Or they make jokes like, okay, well, don't go out and riot. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I am one of those type of Black people. I am a Black person. And as we have seen for unfortunately, with the death of Susan Moore, who was a physician who tried to advocate for herself. And Dr. Jessica Isom can tell you, like, we are in some similar forums in social media where people were like, well, is she really going through this? Like, well, making all types of excuses about why she shouldn't be heard. But then I saw all types of empathy and excuses and humanity felt for the people who were domestic terrorists here 9 miles away from my house, making it scary for everyone to go home because they're seen differently. Right. So we're not those type of people, but we're not identified and we're not visible. Okay, let me get off of that little soapbox and let me ask y'all some of the wonderful questions that we have still going strong. Earlier, so we have a question here, and you know what? I'm gonna allow this question here. Let me show it to you. What do you want to see white psychiatry or psychiatrist providers do differently? What specific actions would you like to see instead? And I know I have my answer, and I've said my answer multiple times. So when are you going to ever see this many wonderful, excellent Black women in the same space to give you these answers? So I'll let anyone take this answer, this question about, actually, Dr. Ebony, Dr. Dennis, can you give us this answer? What specific actions do we need to see from mental health providers who don't identify as Black?
Yeah, I think doing your own self-work is going to be important, because I really believe unconsciously you see us as not real beings. So having intimate relationships with people of color, if you're going to treat people of color, because I think you do harm, literally, if you are not able to understand some of the cultural aspects of being a Black woman. So I think that's incredibly important. And refer out, you know, if you don't want to do that work, you're not willing to do that work, refer to those white psychiatrists who have done that kind of introspective work, or refer to people of color, you know, that are conscious, because Black people can also be self-loathing and not treating others well. So that's some of my encouragement of what you can do. And that's as a psychologist. I can't speak from as a fellow psychiatrist, as you guys said.
But still, as someone who provides mental health care, and I think that what you said first was do your own work. And if you ever hear anything that I say, as long as I'm still not kicked out of the APA, when I talked at there first, and so anti-Black racism is new for the APA to say. No, it's not
new in their consciousness, but not new in their very
new for them to admit. Yeah. So, you know, and I said, you know, please don't act surprised. Like, please, and don't ask Black people to come save you from an issue that we did not create. We did not create systemic racism. We did not create oppression. We didn't asked to be oppressed ourselves. So you are intelligent. You are able to look up everything else. You can tell me all the side effects of valproic acid and Depakote and all of these things, and who shouldn't take lithium and when not to use this medication. But you can't tell that Black people have been suffering. You can't tell that we've been going through these things for generations. You can't tell that. Then do some work. Go read in your book club. Go.
But not even just read, because that's the easy part. Although you should at least lose sleep doing that too. Yeah. I lose sleep reading about Black people all the time. And actually, I lose more sleep reading about white people. But that's just a conversation for another time. What Dr. Dennis said was form intimate relationships with Black people. That's actual work. You have to sit with us when we're doing well, when we're laughing and happy, and also sit with us when we're crying because of something you did or something someone else that you know did. Forming those intimate relationships, that's the part that I haven't seen a large number of psychiatrists or other mental health care professionals do, despite the fact that they work with a high density of Black patients. That is where the harms come from. You're not even informed about the community that you're working with. So play with some other Black kids. Like if you have white children or other children who are not Black, do your children have other friends who are not, that are Black? Are you forming relationships at work, at school, wherever it is that you're frequenting that are actually beyond a superficial level of, hi, how are you doing? Because from that intimacy comes the knowing that's necessary to properly treat Black patients.
Thank you for that, Dr. Jessica. Beyond hi, how you doing? Yes, and I think this is something we see frequently, especially in academic centers that are in urban settings. They don't know anything about their patients, the neighborhoods, anything like that. So shout out to Yale and Harvard and UCLA and Howard University for working on a paper to explain how this curriculum and how we need to educate trainees and residents further as they go through their career. So we have another question here. What does support look like in today's environment from Black men? I'm assuming for Black women. What do we need it to look like? Because we've talked about this. Miss Lindsay, you've talked about this. What do we need Black men to do?
Go hard. Go just as hard as you go hard for everything you enjoy, everything you love, because I'm a firm believer that Black men also benefit in a way from patriarchy. I'm a firm believer that some Black men actually don't want liberation for Black women, they want power. And so they are looking to gain money and the power that white males have. And so when they talk about standing up for us and really being supportive, it is from an ideal of how can I support her so she can benefit me? It's always how can I support her so I can receive something in return? And you have to remove yourself from your advocacy, from your support, from your work, from whatever you're saying you're doing for Black women. You have to take yourself out of the equation, because you supporting Black women should never be about how is that going to benefit me? How am I going to reach power and success? And so you can look at this in the ways of marriage, right? And the way we kind of talk about marriage, and we talk about the role of women in marriage. And it's, well, my wife cleans, so I give her things, right? So it's like that still benefits the man. He comes home, he doesn't have to clean. I buy my wife something, she'll sleep with me. It's always like, if I do this, I'll get this in return. And so that does harm, right? Because that continues this cycle that we have of oppression. And so removing yourself as a Black man from what can I get out of this will really go a long way. And it'll really, really, to me, it will change. It will change kind of that dynamic in our society. and removing, just really removing yourself, removing, as most people would say, the ego, but that's a whole other conversation. But removing yourself from how can I be benefited? Like, what am I going to get out of this situation if I go hard for Black women? Like, what am I going to get? And so, because I think Black women, we do that, right? So we go hard, we're in the streets, we're marching, we're getting arrested, pepper sprayed, right? We're leaving our kids with our cousins to go like march in the street and go to DC and do these different things. We're going hard. We don't even think, how am I going to benefit from this? This is about community aspect. We think about big picture. So Black women, we think of big picture. We don't need people thinking of one little piece of a puzzle. It's a 5,000 piece puzzle. I don't need you worrying about one little piece. So it's really important and imperative to just remove yourself and say, okay, how can I show up? How can I really, really just be there and be fully present and listen to learn, shut up, shut my mouth, and take everything in, and then do the work. Yeah.
I would like to go ahead, Dr. Gordon.
So the question was interesting, and Dr. Islam said earlier, when you imagine, you close your eyes, you see a white woman and you see a Black man. So you asked about the white psychiatrist. I actually want to plug in a call for white women who are psychiatrists, who really are a predominant group in psychiatry, and I don't think people recognize that, in particular psychology. We need you to listen. Shut up and listen. Listen to what you are feeling when you are encountering a Black person. Question what you're thinking. We need you to reprogram your brain, actually. Someone mentioned that there's this idea of Black people being subhuman, but all people, including Black people, have been conditioned to believe that we are subhuman. We don't feel pain. We don't have struggles, right? And so we don't seek the help because, we're just surviving. We're just kind of coping. The reality is there's a lot of reprogramming that has to happen. And for Black men in particular, I think they need to study Black women. And what I mean, I'm not saying study Black women so you can benefit, but study Black women, how they wake up in the morning and what they do from the moment they put their foot on the ground to the time they go to sleep. If you just study Black women, you'll see what we need, right? We need you to help with that and partner with us with doing that. So it's not so hard to just exist in this world. It's kind of trite to say open up the door for Black women, pay for dates. All of that stuff is nice, but women need partnership. We really do need partners. These power struggles and dynamics that many Black women have experienced in their relationships doesn't have to be there, And I think Black women also have to speak up for themselves and say, you're not listening to me. You're not valuing me. And because you're not listening and valuing me, you can't be in my space, right? We have to really be careful about our space. And I think we've been conditioned to allow people to not listen to us, right? And so we have to actually do a better job of saying, you're not listening to me, so you don't get my time, buddy. I'm not cooking nothing today. Just simple things. But we're keeping it real today. So I just want to put that in. But I would also want to say, someone mentioned before about how they feel. So before the pandemic in 2019, Dr. Gordon decided to take a vacation. Like, I literally was like, I'm taking a vacation for a year. And it was before 2020. And I always tell people now that if I hadn't taken a vacation in 2019, I wouldn't have survived 2020. Because I was burned out. I was tired. I don't have a background, a formal background in diversity and inclusion, but that's all I've been doing for my whole career. I should have been a director somewhere for some of these programs that's doing that work. But being a champion for diversity and inclusion had me so tired that getting out of bed was a struggle. And of course I got to work. Of course I did all I needed to do for my patient, but it was a struggle, right? And so some of us are still like thinking, man, I didn't get anything accomplished in 2020. Well, you wasn't supposed to. You were actually supposed to have a break. And I think sometimes the world, the climate, God, whatever you want to say, gave us not the break that we wanted. It gave us an opportunity to see ourselves. So Black men, white women, white men, look at yourself and study Black women. Because if you study Black women, I think that we'll solve a lot of the problems that we have today. That's just my 2 cents.
I would like to add to that. Could I just add to to answer that question? The question is, what can Black men do to help women? And this is rather concrete. each of us on this panel has had this experience of being in a setting, predominantly dominant setting, and we're the one that is addressing the issue. The elephant is in the room, but we're the one who is addressing the issue. And often because so much is projected onto us, that the anger, the frustration, whatever, this is another reason that people have trouble seeing us, because they're so busy projecting their stuff onto us. What would be helpful is if Black men in those settings would speak up and be supportive. And that also applies to white women and white men as well. But in other words, stop letting us just contain the stuff and go ahead and step up.
Yes,
I wanted to.
Ashley, go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in and say two things that have come up through our conversation. I'm very glad that that gentleman asked that question. One thing that came to mind was that you don't have to be sexually attracted to us in order to care about us. And that's one thing that I see as a big girl, plus size woman, that if a man in general, but if Black man is not attracted to me, he acts as though he doesn't care about me. And so you might not think that that is the way that you think, but just as one of the other ladies was talking about, white women really being more conscious about what you're thinking at a certain time when you're talking to Black people, when you're talking to Black women, be a little bit more conscious when you're out or you see a Black woman or you see Black women on social media or whatever. Who do you care more about? Or do you care more about the people who you're sexually attracted to? So I think about that. And the second thing is emotional education. Do the emotional education work so that we don't have to do it for you or teach you, what this emotion is, why I'm feeling that way, and all of that. So those are two things for me.
Thank you for that. And that question led to a question for everyone, not just all of y'all, everyone who doesn't identify as a Black woman. All of these things, we need all of them. And so I'm going to respect Black women's time and know that we have already passed. It's been a great conversation and y'all have stuck through and through. Thank you. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, and please make sure you look at the replay. It will be available as soon as YouTube allows it. But we have one more question. Well, it's a combination of questions, but it's really about how you, as a mental health provider, a clinician, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, an advocate, how you balance taking care of your own mental health and caring for patients. Where is the in between? How do we get that done? And I'm interested in hearing about that from all of y'all. We have so many questions. I'm sorry. So when we go back in YouTube and Facebook, if y'all go back and check panelists, if you want to answer some of them, but how do you balance these things as a woman in mental health? I know that I balance it because in this way, and that I don't want to talk. Like I talk all day. When I come home, I need some silent time, right? Everyone, like, nope, not listening. I'm not engaging. I got to disengage, and that means from any shout out to my residents of Howard. I'm not answering your text. It's not an emergency. I'm not talking. I want to come in. I want to watch what I want. Your Honor is really good, by the way, for y'all to watch. Anyway, how do you balance care of your own mental health while still taking care of patients?
Mine is short. Comedy. I like to laugh, and I definitely prescribe it.
Thank you, Dr. Ebony Dennis.
I have a regular rotation of reality TV shows, and I actually am behind, which is how I communicate to myself I need to titrate how busy I am, because I have a whole bunch of episodes I need to catch up on from multiple shows. So that's my way of escaping into somebody else's life and taking a break, usually laughing, sometimes yelling at the screen, and just feeling normal, basically.
Normalize feeling normal. Exactly.
Dr. Harrison, like you, in the evening, And on the weekends, I really don't want to spend time talking about stuff where people are kind of ruminating, want to be available. But, after giving some feedback, I expect people to do something with that. So, and I guard season is coming up. But, I pay attention to, who are the people that actually feed me. I like to think I feed them as well. And I'm aware of the ones that, sometimes you're just giving, and that's how it is. But I just try to keep track of that and definitely spend some time with those who also feed my spirit.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Dunlap. Yes, people need to do a little bit of work for themselves sometimes. Like once I give you the lessons, you got to do a little work for yourself. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Thank you. Does anybody else want to add anything else that they've been doing? Some healthy boundaries, how you keep that going?
I wanted to go ahead.
No, I was going to just say from an advocate perspective, and as someone who manages a mental health disorder, more specifically a mood disorder. So for me, my balance, quote unquote balance, looks a lot different from a lot of people. But the biggest thing for me is routine. And so staying on a routine, and I mean everything from sleeping at the same time, going to, even on the weekends, doing this kind of some things like, like drinking tea every morning and writing in my journal every day and doing those different things that kind of keep me on some set type of routine has really helped me manage my mental health. It's helped me kind of move and process through things. And by doing that, being in those routines, I'm able to really kind of identify different changes in my mood or different changes in like my emotions. I can kind of like identify like how my body's feeling at that present moment. And I'm like, okay, I need to get off of social media, put my phone down, and I need to do some breathing exercises really quick. And it's really like that. As soon as I feel it, I'm like, okay, phone down, TV off, breathe in, out, in, like, that's it. And that's all I do. And then as I feel myself kind of calm down, I'm like, okay, now I feel better. So I think routine is really important, as well as like listening to your body. Our body oh my gosh, our body tells us so much about how we are doing mentally, like our mental health. If we just listen to it and stop like ignoring it, I think we can all just kind of benefit from that. So
Yes, thank you for that, Lindsay. Thank you, Ms. Lindsay, and thank you all of our panelists. I almost forgot that I was the host. I was just here listening. I forgot I have to wrap it up and keep time. So thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you know how to find each and every person here on social media. If you have questions, please be sure that you share widely as soon as it's back up on YouTube. Just want to say that one thing before I close, and I think we've heard this echo a lot, that sometimes it's up to the Black woman to speak out. Everybody waits for the Black woman to figure out a solution. And I learned last week from another psychoanalyst, shout out to Dr. Dion Powell. She said that when she does anything in diversity and inclusion, anything talking about racism and analyzing what's going on with the group, she says, first, someone who's not Black has to speak. Two people who are not Black have to speak about what's going on before a Black person has to come in to save the day. And I am going to be using that in all the consulting that I'm doing. I'm going to give her credit, Respect Black Women. And I'm going to make sure that we all know that it is not up to Black women to carry everything on their backs. It's not our jobs to always have to save everything, because you know what? We have to save ourselves, as we've learned from this conversation. I heard actually a student say today that Black people are living sicker and dying younger, and Black women are included in that group. So we really need to make sure that we protect and respect Black women, including Megan Thee Stallion, and listen to her as you run, like Dr. Ebony Dennis told us that she inspires us all. She advocates for herself. Look up her New York Times article if you don't know what I'm talking about. and just protect us. We're here working for you. We need the same work from ourselves. You all have been wonderful. And just a couple housekeeping things for us. Follow us and me at Black Psychiatry on Instagram and Twitter if you have not already. Shout out to the Howard University for allowing me to do this and still paying me. And shout out to BPA, the institution that raised me. We have new stuff rolling out from BPA, so look out for that. We are streaming on their info page on Facebook, so thank you for that. Also, thank you to NAMI for connecting me and helping me learn and meet Ashley Scott. And thank you for supporting us as we go through always. Just so you know, we love all the Black people. We are here for all Black culture. Black Psychiatry, Black men are up next. We already have some wonderful panelists who are coming through in March, so make sure you tune in for that. We know all the Black things are going to be happening in February, so we're going to take a little bit of time off, but know that I do have a Black Trivia Night, February 20th, Black History. If you know your facts, if you don't, if you want to learn, come and make sure you follow us there. Also, and that's about it. Thank you for joining us. Please make sure that you protect Black women and respect Black women at all costs. We don't play any games. We're here for you. So thank you to these ladies. Thank you for giving me your time. I'm so happy that you are assembled here for free 99, even though I respect you. I don't have any coins. So thank you, but I'm working on it. So thank you all for being here. You've been wonderful. Make sure you catch the replay and share widely. Good night, everybody.
Yay.